Good morning. We are going to talk today about celebrity divorces in Texas. My name is Brandy Austin, and this is Larry Mike, and we're with the Brandy Austin Law Firm. We are going to start out this morning with, Khloe Kardashian and Lamar Odom. And in case you don't know what they look like, we have visual aids from Maria, our family law legal assistant and translator. Okay. Let's start off. The main issue in this divorce, allegedly, was drug and alcohol abuse. Now, tell me how that plays out in a divorce case.
So, I'm really unfamiliar with the Kardashians. So drugs and alcohol do play a significant part when it comes to a marriage, when it comes to a divorce. They tend to hamper the marriage, they tend to cause negative feelings, they even cause people to be violent or just don't care about the divorce in general. So when we're looking at drugs and alcohol, the one thing about that is when it comes to those terms and dealing with that, people tend to mess up the marriage, they tend to want to get a divorce based on those issues.
Okay, so if I was getting divorced and I thought my spouse was using drugs, could I, if we didn't have kids, could I make him take a drug test?
Yeah, you can make him take a drug test. But normally when you're talking about with kids and without kids, drugs are very important with kids because it determines on who is the better parent to be there for the best interest of the children. Drugs around children, Texas does not like, CPS doesn't like, so they take that very, very seriously.
I'm going to give you a little background on what happened. Khloe Kardashian got the call that Lamar Odom was found unconscious in a brothel. Yes. Related to drugs and alcohol, and she retracted the divorce. So talk about retraction of divorce in Texas. Is it possible? Does it happen? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it does happen. I mean, we call it non-suit, and we have it several times where people come in and they want a divorce, and we're going through the entire process. We filed a petition for divorce, maybe even have a hearing date set up, and then all of a sudden they're like, don't want to go through with it. It happens a lot. It's basically a non-suit of a divorce. A lot of times in those situations, the parties come back together and they reconcile, or they figure out, hey, I wanted to use this as a mechanism to make this person understand this is how serious I am about this marriage, and sometimes it works.
And we get that actually frequently, right?
Yes, very frequently.
And would you say it's more on the part of men or women who want to save the marriage, in your experience?
Oh, yeah, mostly it's the women.
Really? I find it's the men. I get a lot of them that come in and they really want to save the marriage, and we want to help them. I mean, we would prefer to save the marriage as well,
yeah.
But at the end of the day, both parties have to want to be a couple in order to save the marriage. Can you get divorced if only one party wants to get divorced?
It is possible. It is very possible. You can. We have a lot of times. Well, there was one that I had where, she came in and she didn't want it. All the way up until the actual day of the final divorce, she still said, I didn't want it, but it happened.
It happens. So the judge can order it no matter what. Okay, so let's talk about what would happen if Khloe and Lamar weren't actually married. Would there be, if they bought all this stuff together and had a house and lived there together, would they still need to go through the divorce process? Would there be property to separate? What happens if you're not technically married?
Well, when we're talking about technicalities, it just depends on if they're common law married. Sometimes we have that where people don't have the official piece of paper. They haven't had the actual ceremony with the dun 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 dun. They haven't had that. But they went around and they said, hey, we're husband and wife. They held themselves out as husband and wife. They bought property together. Other people knew that. They were filing income taxes together. So in those situations, the court's going to treat it like, a marriage and separate the property. But if these two aren't married and they're just boyfriend and girlfriend living together, then there's no way that they're going to get a divorce.
Okay. And if they say they are filing taxes together and they are under the Texas Code, it's called marriage without formalities. And if they're common law married, do they have to get a divorce?
They don't have to get a divorce per se, but it would be,
What happens if they don't and one party gets upset, the other party remarries?
yeah. Then, in that instance, and it's happened before, where if they don't do that, the other party remarries, then that person can come in and say, oh, this isn't a proper marriage. We were married based on the marriage without formalities, and this marriage is void, ours is right, so then we need to get a divorce.
And this can come up a lot in circumstances where one party dies and there's a large estate and there's a fight over the money in the end. If somebody was married without formalities, common law married, and didn't go through the actual divorce process, they're technically still the spouse. So they get more property than the other party, and there's a whole long legal battle that'll happen. Okay, let's move on to Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin. Okay, so the term conscious uncoupling was made famous by these two. Conscious uncoupling means a lot of things, but our analysis is more of a collaborative law approach. Larry, will you talk a little more about that?
Yes, so I had no idea what this meant. Outside of all the spiritual aspects that was mentioned in it, it sounds like that both parties have said, hey, look, we're both at fault. We're in a marriage. We need to work this out for the best interest of everybody. So it really sounds like they're doing some type of collaborative, some type of mediated agreement that, hey, let's just work this out, be civil, and separate the things, in the best interest of both parties. So in that instance, anytime someone's getting a divorce, one of the best processes is to come together and realize, look, let's take all the emotions out of it. We've got property here, we've got kids, we need to figure out how to do things right with our kids, and both parents co-parent effectively, set up schedules, set up things to not disrupt their lives. But then when it comes to the property, hey, we both came in this together, we bought property, we bought all kinds of things together, figure out how to separate this so it'll be an amicable split. So that's what it sounds like to me.
So, but collaborative law has specific requirements under Texas law. It's not just, hey, let's agree and move on, correct?
Yeah.
So you can't have, both parties can't have attorneys.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not always the best option. You really do have to analyze whether collaborative law works for you and your family, whether, if there's too much money or power on one side of the relationship, then the collaborative law may not be the best option. But there's still mediation. You can mediate before you get divorced, before you do the paperwork. You can mediate, you can sit down, you can have two lawyers come together, you can come together yourself. I mean, there are a lot of options to resolve a conflict or a marriage without all the court filings and the protective orders and all that stuff. Isn't that right?
Yeah. And the one thing that you touched on before was it's going to take both parties wanting to do something to make it work. If one person doesn't want to do it, then it's not going to work at all.
Okay, so Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin, they still take vacations together. They have I believe it's similar to a 50-50 custody arrangement. What are your thoughts on continuing vacations together and how that looks for the children and how that affects future relationships?
My honest thoughts, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, you hardly see, dealing with people who are getting divorced and dealing with children, it's emotional. I mean, family law is one of the laws that attorneys are just like, because it's emotional. You're dealing with emotions. But to see a couple who says, hey, look, we're just not working out, but we got kids, so we're going to make it as normal for them as possible. And they're taking vacations and it's happy time. I mean, the kids are the ones that are benefiting from this. And that's a very positive thing. It's something that you hardly ever see. So as much as the term of conscious uncoupling is just foreign to me, the idea that you can, go your separate ways, but still come together for the kids, I mean, that's amazing.
All right, and okay, the next couple we're going to talk about is Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And here's a picture of them if you don't recall who they are. Captain Jack, and I believe she was in a movie with him. I remember that. And Magic Mike XXL. Okay. There were a lot of issues in this marriage, allegedly. Obviously, we don't know the details of what happened, but just based on the information available on the internet, the rumors and the TV shows, we hear there was a lot of domestic violence. And before we go any further, we want to put the domestic violence hotline number up. So if you are in a domestic violence situation, or if you just need more information, or you have a friend that is in a bad situation, please call 877-701-SAFE or 877-701-7233. If you just want more information online, you can go to www.safehaventc.org. And just so you know, if you go to that website and somebody else is in the house, there is a part that you can click that completely changes the website. It's on the right-hand side in a big purple box. Okay. So domestic violence and a protective order. What does that process look like in Texas?
Well, one of the things for protective orders, that is an important tool to use to keep you safe if there is domestic violence going on in the household. It's also a necessary tool to keep you safe if there's domestic violence going on in the household. So basically the process is simple. Paperwork is filed, you go to the court, you have a hearing, and let the judge know, hey, this is what's going on, for the judge to determine whether or not a protective order should be issued. Now, if a protective order gets issued, it gets blasted out to the law enforcement agencies. The person who has a protective order on them can't come within 500 feet of certain things, so it limits their access to the abused party. And it's not something to be taken lightly. So you have to have enough evidence, enough facts to basically show the judge, hey, this is why this step is needed. And that's the process is just simple as that. Now, when we're talking about Texas, Texas is a gun state.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have guns and you get a protective order issued on you, those guns are gone.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they don't get a protective order and they get a permanent injunction, which is a little less than a protective order, the guns are still gone there too. So this is something to be taken very seriously, especially if you've got federal laws regarding domestic abuse as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just for regular people. It applies to people who have careers that carry guns as well.
Oh, that could be difficult.
Very difficult, very difficult.
Okay, so tell me about the hearing. Is it ex parte, which means it takes place outside of the other parties' hearing, or outside of their knowledge, or is it a joint hearing? What does that actually look like?
So, well, if we're going into a temporary restraining order that's ex parte, so a lot of times what I've seen, what we have done in certain cases is someone comes in and they say, hey, this is what's going on in my household. I want to get a divorce, but there's this abuse, there's this, there's that. So automatically, if we're going to file something, we go to the judge, we file the paperwork, and we let the judge know, hey, outside of everyone else, it's just the attorney and the affidavit. These are the things that are going on. This is why we need this temporary restraining order to get things put in place. And then that'll happen. And then we have a certain time frame to come back so that that person who we have said, hey, has done this, they have an opportunity to present their case. For a full-on protective order hearing, a lot of times what happens is we'll get something put in place, and then there's a date scheduled to come back in to actually have the full hearing so that they can present their case. Something like this where it's that, it's that stringent, that other person has to have the opportunity to say, hey, here's my evidence, here are my facts.
And so when we're talking about evidence, we're talking about hospital records, we're talking about police reports, photos,
Yes.
videos, anything that you have, witnesses. All of these people, all of these documents can help prove that there's been domestic violence, or at least there's a risk of domestic violence, correct?
Yes. In court, sometimes you may not even have all of that. It just may be, he said, she said. And that's rough to present it that way to have a judge determine whether or not there's something there. So we always like to have as much evidence as possible so that we can protect the person that we're trying to protect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so once you get the protective order in place, and so they can't come within 500 feet, what happens if you see your ex-spouse and you have a protective order? What do you do?
Call the police.
Immediately.
Immediately.
And what happens to them?
They get put in jail.
They get put in jail, so it's, protection. There's no questions, and oftentimes if there's a dispute between a couple and there's no proof of any violence, the cops will often say, well, this is a civil matter, and say you need to go through the regular court system. But if you've been diligent and you get your protective order in advance, then you don't have to do that. If anything happens to a spouse, and it could be a man or a woman,
Yes.
is immediately taken away. So abuse happens on both sides. We've seen it, and both parties need to be protected, because the last thing we want is a mother or father to be taken away from their children, or someone to be injured, hurt, or in worst case killed. So again, please, if you have a domestic violence issue, call 911 or the Safe Haven in Tarrant County. Locally, I'm sure you can just call 911 in your area if you're outside of DFW. Okay, so in that relationship, Amber Heard requested alimony. Let's talk about alimony in Texas. Can you get alimony?
We call it spousal maintenance, but yes, you can get it.
So it's not alimony. It doesn't last forever.
Yeah, it doesn't last forever. I mean, there are time limits on it. I think the minimum you have to be married is like 10 years, and I think the duration for that is like 5 years that you can get it. But it's not just an automatic, here's some money. And I'm unfamiliar with the celebrities, because to me, a celebrity that is famous, I mean, they both have tons of money. So a lot of times the people that we deal with, our clients, you normally have one party who is the breadwinner, who's bringing in the majority of the money, and then someone who has had children and they decided to stay at home, which is, that is a job in itself.
Yes.
But once they get divorced, that money that's coming in from the other spouse is no longer going to be there. So the spousal maintenance is there to allow them to have some income coming in so that they're able to get back on their feet to make the income that they would have made if they wouldn't have made the choice to stay at home.
So in celebrity cases, it could be, and I'm just guessing here, that say Amber Heard took a hiatus from acting to follow Johnny Depp around to film Pirates of the Caribbean or whatever he's filming, and she wasn't able to act. So her career got put on hold, so she wanted to be compensated till she got back up and running. In the end, Amber Heard donated $7 million to charity, which was her settlement. Allegedly. This is what we see, allegedly. So, okay. When we get someone, let's say we get a stay-at-home mom with a husband that makes over $100,000, and she's not had she had an education, but she went and had babies and 3 kids, and she is in a situation where she thinks it's time to get divorced. She doesn't have any money for attorney's fees. She doesn't have any money to get started. What would that process look like? And they come in, they see us, they fill out paperwork, and we file their case. What happens next?
Well, what happens next is if we file their case, we go forward. I mean, we're gonna ask for child support, especially if she's been the person who is there, that is taking care of the children, taking doctor's appointments, extracurricular activities, you name it. I mean, she is there for the kids. So we're going to ask for her to be able to designate the primary residence of the children. We're going to ask for certain other rights, and we're going to ask for her to be able to collect the child support to help support the kids financially. We're also going to ask for some spousal maintenance because she's taken the opportunity to raise the children, but then put her career on hold. So she's going to have some income to allow her to get back on her feet. From there, we go through the standard process of figuring out the breakdown of the community property. Texas, it's 50-50, the presumption is. Without any other mitigating circumstances of any at-fault divorce procedures, we can just go for a straight 50-50 split. And then we see what happens.
Sometimes that split is different if one party's earning capacity is higher
Yes.
and one is lower, right?
Yes.
So explain, I'm gonna give you a scenario and you tell me what split could be that a court might do in Texas. Say a wife worked and put her husband through medical school, and she worked full time, she had kids, cared for the kids, and she paid for his education, she paid for everything and took care of the household while he was going through medical school. Say 5 years after he graduates, he finds someone that he would rather be with, and she opened a small house cleaning company to pay for the education. So she's never going to make the money, not never, but more than likely not going to make the same money as a physician doing her business. What would the court take into consideration there?
Yeah, they're going to take into consideration all of those facts. I mean, especially if this guy went and found someone else and is taking community resources and spending on this person, which fortunately we do see a lot. They're going to look at the assets that have been wasted on this other person. They're going to look at the time and toll that it took for the wife to help this guy get to his career path. They're going to look at the earning capacity. I mean, they're going to take all these factors into play. So it will probably go from a 50-50. I mean, in some cases I've seen where it's been a 70-30, and the 70 in favor of the wife and 30% to the husband. But it just all depends on the evidence and the facts that you have in play to show to the judge, hey, this is why we need a disproportionate share of the estate. Without those, the judge is going to lean straight back to what the law is, a 50-50 split.
And we're talking generalized here. It can be women who end up being the breadwinners, or men. We've seen it both ways. It's obviously less common to have a male come in who's put his wife through school and all of that, but we encourage it here. We do. Okay, so in the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case, Johnny wanted attorney's fees. Is it possible to get attorney's fees, your attorney's fees paid for in a divorce?
It is possible.
So what has to happen for that to actually occur?
So there has to be a lot of things that come into play. I mean, when we're talking about the party's conduct, what they've done in the case, if the attorney's been making diligent efforts to get things going, and then the other side, meaning the other party that's in it, if you're asking for them to send you documents, they're like, they sit and wait, you have to keep requesting. And those are things that you go and tell the judge, look, we wouldn't have had to charge our client this much money if they would have done what they were supposed to do to allow us to get this case going. A lot of times what courts do is they say, you pay your attorney's fees, and it's done. In this instance, with this case, when we're talking about these guys, I mean, it was a bold move to try to get that done, but when you have these allegations of domestic abuse and all this violence, and then there's this settlement to give this money, I was just astounded that he asked for attorney's fees, because I don't think any judge would have granted him those attorney's fees.
Not in Texas, anyway.
Yeah, not in Texas. But you have to prove certain things on why your party needs those fees, and it may just very well simply be that they weren't the breadwinner, they didn't have the money. So going in, there are certain things that you ask for, even during if there are multiple court hearings, like, hey, Your Honor, we need internal attorney's fees. She's not making any money. He was the breadwinner, or she was the breadwinner, he wasn't. And they have the money, so we'd like to use some of that money to pay for attorney's fees. And then judges will, they'll take all that into consideration.
Okay. We get a lot of questions of people who don't have a lot of money who come in and say, well, can you just get my fees for your services from the other party? We can, but we do require upfront money, because most people don't know, it's over $400 to file a case in Tarrant County or Dallas County if you have kids, correct?
Yeah, it's like, close to $400.
Plus you have service. There's a lot of actual upfront court fees that go into filing a divorce case, and that's across the board. No matter whether you do your divorce on your own or you have an attorney, there are state mandated fees that you have to pay, service fees that you have to pay. There's fees and more fees. But in the end, if we can get to a temporary orders hearing, we can discuss attorney's fees and try to get that worked out. Okay, we're going to move on to the most salacious split up of 2016, Brangelina. I think everybody knows who Brad Pitt and Angelina are, but there's a picture of them if you are unfamiliar. Okay. So, you okay, Larry?
It's coffee.
CPS was involved in this case. So, surprisingly, a large number of cases that we receive anyway have CPS involvement. At least I guess I was surprised when I first started practicing. I would say maybe 30% of cases have CPS involvement. Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah, CPS is involved in a lot of cases.
And is it always? So let's just talk about CPS involvement. It's scary. It's scary for both parties involved, correct?
Yes, it is.
How often does CPS actually come in and take children from their families?
Not often. I mean, they don't just come in and take the kids. I mean, there has to be some serious violations for them to come in and take the kids. A lot of times CPS comes, they have to, if they get any type of phone call that, hey, something is happening with kids, they're going to come and investigate. A lot of times the trouble that you have is when they do come to talk, the parents are like, shut the door, no, and they think it's going to go away.
Mm-hmm. No.
But they keep coming back.
Yeah.
So,
they're required by the state
they are. They're
to
required
continue to investigate until they have enough information to determine whether there's not really anything there or whether there's something there that needs to be investigated further, right?
Yes.
So, in order to protect your rights, we always recommend that if CPS is knocking on your door, call an attorney.
Yes.
Call an attorney just to make sure things go smoothly. It doesn't have to be a battle. It's not a battle at this point. Until something is filed with the court, it's not really a battle in the court system, right?
Yes. It definitely call an attorney. I mean, there's cases that I've had where people are honest, and they're like, I haven't done anything wrong. And they're just like, but you've got to understand, like, certain things that you say may be misconstrued. Or, if, just call an attorney. CPS comes in, call an attorney, cooperate, and, we'll walk you through that process.
Some of the things CPS requires, drug testing is probably number one. Most all CPS cases that I've had, even if there haven't been a whole lot of allegations of drugs, they just drug test.
Yeah.
And then they look at medical history. And so if there are specific things that injuries a child can have that automatically say, hey, there's a problem, like spiral fractures, things like that. At that point, that's when CPS can file with a court without your knowledge and then come with papers and take you and take the kids from you, right?
Yeah, and when I talk about talking to CPS, I really want to stress this. Me growing up, my dad would get the belt. I call them beatings, right? But when someone else who's not used to that term hears the term beating, they think, oh my goodness, that is a straight beating. But in reality, it's just a spanking.
Right.
So certain words that people are used to using, if you say that to someone who's not used to that, I can be taken out of context. So it's very important that you talk to someone who understands the process to help walk you through it, because you may say something that doesn't mean that, and it gets construed totally different.
Yeah, I say to my daughter sometimes, I'm going to beat you. I have never beat my daughter, but I always tell her that because I picked it up. I'm going to beat you with a wet noodle somewhere. And she has no idea what a spanking actually means. But if someone else heard that, and my husband has said, hey, maybe you should not say that in front of people. So just be careful what you say and what's going on. Okay, so Brad Pitt actually got supervised visitation. Let's put a picture of the Angelina Jolie back up one more time. it's live, so sometimes we have to take a break to find out what the emergencies are. We're still actually working, so there are emergencies. Okay, supervised visitation. Brad Pitt got supervised visitation. I believe it was only briefly. I think he was able to get regular visitation later. But supervised visitation is always really scary for people to hear.
Yes, yes it is.
So what does that look like? Who supervises it?
It can be another family member. Sometimes it can even be,
The mom.
the mom,
Or dad.
or dad. And a lot of times, one of the best places for supervised visitation is somewhere where they have workers there, there are cameras there. There's a place that's set up that allows someone to report back to the court, hey, this is how things are going. Especially if there are allegations that that the children don't want to be around this parent. But if you have someone there who's a neutral party seeing that, they can come to the court and say, hey, these visits are going really well. The kids are reacting in this manner, and it may allow the process to move forward for some type of standard expanded or even a 50-50 access and possession.
Okay. So supervised visitation, you can get that at, the court has to order it, right?
Yes.
Or you can volunteer.
Or you can voluntarily agree, hey,
Okay, but that can be changed. So it's not the end of the world if you get supervised visitation. There could be allegations of abuse with actual information to back it up, or drug issues. A supervised visitation allows you the opportunity to help yourself.
Yes.
And then help your children, correct?
Yes, and a lot of times if it's used in a conjunction with some type of stair step, where it goes from supervised visitation for a certain amount of time, and then maybe some unsupervised, and then work your way all the way up to a full unsupervised with overnight access. I mean, it's one of the better things to do, especially for parties who haven't been in the children's lives for a long amount of time. It just gives them the opportunity to build that relationship so that they can get what they need to get to be around the kids.
So this is a great opportunity to say this hypothetical. There is a dad that's had primary possession of a child, and the mom took off when the child was younger. 6 years later, mom comes back. She, went through some issues. She wants to be involved in her child's life. Can she petition the court to be back in the child's life?
Yes, she's mom.
So, no matter how many years it's been,
No matter how many years, she's mom.
she's mom. And does the court in Texas, say mom or dad, does the court in Texas allow for her or him to become involved in the child's life?
Yes, they want that to happen. I mean, courts want that to happen.
So, this is the time they would use the stair-step possession schedule, right?
Definitely. And there may be even judges where they utilize the stair step, but then also there may need to be some reunification counseling in conjunction with mom seeing a therapist on their own, and then the child seeing on their own, and then maybe together. I mean, because it's a process where if you're dealing with small minds who are developing emotionally, and then having this person come in and say, hey, I'm mom or I'm dad, they need that time to have reunification, to break down, to heal, so that they can become a family again.
The primary parent can't stop that. If there are issues with, again, drug abuse or physical abuse or emotional abuse, which is a little more difficult to prove, but it still can be proven and it still does occur. Unless those things occur, you can't stop the reunification with a parent and a child. Texas, requires child support. Unless the rights are terminated, somebody's paying child support if the parents aren't together. And in conjunction with that, they also want a relationship with the child. We don't want children to grow up without both parents in their lives, at least somewhat, unless there is a problem. So the courts are open to it, and we get consultations frequently where they're like, well, this person just showed up, they haven't been in their life. Well, okay, we can do a reunification, we can do a stair step, we can ease it in, and we can do where it's mandatory this many visits at this time before you move on to the next step to make sure that person's going to stay around.
Yes.
But it still is going to happen. We can ease that process for all the parties involved. Attorneys can really dig into the issues and see what's going on and make sure everybody is happy and healthy along the way, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, that was a little side note, but important nonetheless, because those questions do come up frequently. In the Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie case, there were accusations of infidelity with a coworker. So there are other issues in this case, and the infidelity it seems to be kind of a side note. We don't know if it's true. We're just going to go on the assumption that it is true. What is that? How does that play out in Texas?
We're talking about adultery, right?
Yes, adultery. A is for adultery.
So, yeah, adultery is one of the at-fault provisions for divorce. Texas is a no-fault divorce state. So, adultery is one of the options where you can say, hey, look, this is why we're getting divorced, because the other party committed adultery. It's tough to prove. There might be allegations and certain things like that, but just a mere suggestion of it or an innuendo is not going to prove that. I mean, you have to show that this person willingly had sexual intercourse with someone other than their husband or their wife. With that said, if that gets proven up, it allows the other party to have a larger share of the community estate. Also, if we're talking about the kids, I think they have like six kids. So if that was done in front of the kids, or the kids know about that, or they're privy to that information, that's going to change things when it comes to possession and access, maybe some conservatorship aspects. Judges frown on that when it comes to kids hearing about or being privy to that information, because it hurts them emotionally.
So let's give another scenario. Couples have been married 4 years. Husband, they don't have any children. There's limited community property. Husband finds out wife has been cheating on him, but she hasn't wasted any money. She hasn't paid for any hotel rooms. She hasn't paid for his food or anything. How likely are the courts to, give the entire house to the husband because the wife cheated?
I don't think it's likely. I mean, in some instances, you may have in different counties a judge that takes a hard line, harsh stance, and comes down with the hammer. Most of the time, you get a so what approach. I mean, there are times where they don't see the adultery as the cause of the divorce. They see it as a symptom. So it just depends on the situation. A lot of times, if there's kids involved, that's when things, you really get a good ruling. But if there aren't any kids, it just depends. It's unfortunate.
So we always tell our clients, it's awful. It's awful what you're going through. This is probably going to be the hardest time in your life, especially if you find out that the person you've committed your life to is cheating on you. And we like to have all that information up front so we know how to approach the case. But it's not always going to change the outcome of your case. So it's good information to have, but important to note that the courts don't always see it the same way as the person who's being cheated on. Okay, one last question. You mentioned there's 6 kids. One thing I read online, so allegedly, was that the oldest son, and I believe he's a teenager, refused to visit with Brad Pitt after the split. So what does the court force a parent to do if a teenager refuses, and they frequently refuse, to do something?
So, and there's a court order in place?
There's a court order that allows possession.
Okay. So there's a court order in place, and one party is to have possession of the child on their time. They're going to make that happen. So
if you present the child at the appropriate time and place, and the child, teenagers are still children, regardless of what they think, and they flat out refuse to do something, do you pick them up kicking and screaming and force them into a car? No.
No, you don't do that. Here's what I've seen, and I've had 2 cases, teenagers, and one was 17, and I think the other one was like 16. But they refused to go. No, not going to happen. So the other party who was supposed to have possession, well, they filed an enforcement. It's like, hey, they're not allowing me to have the possession period. It didn't go well for the mom or dad who had the children. And they were like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, I told them to go. but they didn't go. And there are certain things that, there are cases out there where, what did you do when they didn't go? If you put them on punishment or grounded them or tried to make them go. But a lot of times, parents are like, oh, hands off, it's not my thing. They don't want to go, they don't want to go. As a parent, what you need to do is, if that happens and you know that your child is doing it, you got to sit down and talk to them. Get with the other parent, come together, have a family meeting and say, listen, you have to do this. You have to go no matter what you want to do. As long as you're under my roof, you're going to go and do this. But you have to talk it out, because if you don't, you could find yourself in an enforcement hearing saying, hey, I didn't do anything, and things may go bad for you. But yeah, courts want that to happen, and it's a sticky line when you're dealing with teenagers. It's very sticky.
And it also really depends on the judge. Judges in family law cases can rule in different ways, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I've had some cases where if you don't specifically lay out the place of the exchange of the children, the time of the exchange, exactly how it's going to happen, you can't really enforce it.
Yeah.
You can't really enforce it. So it's important to have an attorney draft that language so that your rights are protected, your children, everyone's rights are protected. So call an attorney, call us. We'll be happy to give you a free consultation so that we can talk about it. And I'm going to put Larry's information up, which is everybody's information. Our phone number is 817-841-9906. Our address 2404 Roosevelt Drive, Arlington, Texas 76016. And Larry, what's your email address?
Larry at Brandy, like the wine, Austin, like the city, law.com.
That's regular spelling of Larry. His information's on there. I'd like to thank Maria, our legal assistant, for holding the cards. For Hunter, for helping us, since our producer, Kelly Bozeman, we miss you, is out today, which explains the technical difficulties. We will put this video up, maybe turn it into a podcast, since there have been some video, yes, Darth Vader and Stormtrooper cups. Since there have been some technical issues with the video, if you have any questions, please feel free to give us a call. Send us a message on Facebook, email Larry. We'd be happy to give you a free consultation or just some more information. And thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next week.